I never thought I would find myself in a situation like this. My name is Mark, and I was married to Jessica for 3 years. On the surface, everything seemed perfectly fine. We had a cozy little apartment in a decent neighborhood. Both of our jobs were stable, and we even had plans to start a family in the next couple of years. But looking back now, there were signs I didn't want to see. Jessica has always had a fiery personality. She was the kind of woman who could light up a room with her laughter but could just as easily drain it of warmth when she was upset. The last few months leading up to the discovery were filled with tension. She started spending more time with friends, claiming they needed her support. I would often find her texting late into the night, her face illuminated by the glow of her phone screen, a look of intense concentration etched across her face. I remember the day everything changed. It was a regular Saturday afternoon. I was in the living room trying to catch up on some chores while Jess was out with friends. I had decided to clean out the junk drawer which had accumulated everything from old receipts to random batteries. While I was rummaging through, I stumbled upon a piece of paper that didn't belong to me. It was a receipt from a local auto repair shop, signed by someone named Jake. The date was recent, just a week ago. Out of curiosity, I looked up the shop online. It was a small garage just a few miles from our apartment. Something about the name Jake sent shivers down my spine. I could feel a sense of dread creeping in. I tucked the receipt away, pushing it to the back of my mind as I tried to focus on the chores. But later that night, I couldn't shake the feeling. When Jess came home, she was dressed a little too nicely for a casual outing with friends. I could tell she had been drinking. She laughed, spun around, and gave me a kiss that felt a little too rehearsed. I asked her how her day was, and she launched into a story about how her friends were struggling with their relationships. An odd coincidence, I thought. From that day on, I couldn't ignore the signs. I started snooping a bit, checking her phone when she was in the shower, looking for anything that would either confirm or dispel my growing suspicions. I found texts between her and Jake, messages that were flirtatious, intimate, and filled with promises of secret meetings. The worst part, she was lying about where she was going and who she was with. The moment I found the incriminating text, my heart sank. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. I had to confront her. That night when she returned from hanging out with friends, I was waiting for her, shaking with a mix of anger and betrayal. "Jess, we need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She looked at me, her eyes wide and defensive. "What's wrong?" she asked, her tone dripping with feigned innocence. I pulled out the phone and showed her the texts. Her face paled and the laughter disappeared. She attempted to brush it off, saying it was just harmless flirting. But deep down, we both knew it was much more than that. I felt rage boiling inside me. I had trusted this woman with my life, and she was betraying me with a mechanic named Jake. How cliché, I thought. But then came the denial, her insistence that it wasn't serious, that she had just gotten caught up in the moment. The confrontation spiraled into a huge argument filled with accusations and denials. I remember her saying, "You're overreacting. It was just sex, Mark. Just sex." Those words hit me like a freight train. I never thought I would hear my wife use such casual language about something so intimate. After hours of back and forth, I was left reeling. The emotional impact of the betrayal was overwhelming. I felt humiliated, angry, and most of all, heartbroken. How could she do this to me? In that moment, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let this slide. I wouldn't just walk away without doing something about it. Jess had made her choice, and now I would make mine. My mind began to race, plotting how I could get back at her and this mechanic. This was just the beginning of a plan that would leave her stranded, both literally and emotionally. After the confrontation with Jessica, I felt a whirlwind of emotions tearing through me: anger, betrayal, and a strange sense of determination. I knew I had to act, but I couldn't let my emotions cloud my judgment. I needed a plan, something calculated that would hit both her and Jake where it hurt the most. I took a few days to gather my thoughts, keeping my distance from Jessica while she tried to pretend everything was normal. I ignored her attempts at conversation and the apologies that felt insincere. I started doing some research on Jake, the mechanic. Luckily, I had a few friends who could help me dig deeper. I discovered that Jake owned a small auto repair shop just a few blocks from where we lived. I learned that he was well liked in the community, but there were whispers about his shady business practices. Apparently, he had a history of cutting corners and didn't always adhere to the best safety practices when working on cars. This gave me an idea. I decided to pay him a visit, under the guise of needing some work done on my own car. I figured if I could get a sense of his character and gather some evidence of his sketchy business practices, I could use that to my advantage. I had no intention of confronting him directly. I just wanted to see if I could find a way to bring him down. The next day, I walked into his garage, pretending to be a clueless customer. Jake greeted me with that cocky, charming smile I had come to resent. I acted the part of an innocent husband, asking questions about repairs and prices, subtly gauging his demeanor. I noticed the way he interacted with his employees, loud, brash, and entirely unprofessional. There was something untrustworthy about him, and the more I observed, the more my instincts screamed that he was not the kind of person who should be trusted with anyone's car, let alone my wife's heart. As I talked to Jake, I fished for information while trying to keep my composure. I learned that he often took on side jobs, repairing cars without proper documentation, and that he didn't always use genuine parts. The gears in my mind began to turn, and I realized this could be my way to sabotage him. I could anonymously report him to the authorities, and if he lost his shop, it might just send Jessica into a tailspin, stranding her without a car and leaving her to face the consequences of her actions. After my visit to Jake's shop, I went home and started putting my plan into action. I spent hours online, researching how to report a mechanic for unsafe practices and fraud. I found an anonymous tip line for the local automotive regulatory agency and saved all the information I gathered about Jake's business. It felt like I was preparing for a battle, and I was determined to win. In the following days, I continued to play the dutiful husband, all while executing my plan behind the scenes. I watched Jessica closely, noting her reactions to the growing distance between us. I could see the confusion in her eyes as I grew more distant. She would often text me, asking why I was being cold, but I played it cool, responding with vague answers about needing time to think. Meanwhile, I filed the anonymous tip about Jake's garage, detailing the unsafe practices I had witnessed and the shady operations I had uncovered. I made sure to cover my tracks, using a different email address and a VPN to mask my IP. It felt exhilarating, like I was finally taking control of my life, and the thrill of the potential fallout was intoxicating. The day I received an email confirming that my report had been acknowledged was the day I felt a flicker of hope. I knew I was on the right path, and now it was just a matter of time before something gave. I could hardly believe that I was capable of devising such a plan. I was a man on a mission, and I wouldn't stop until Jessica felt the consequences of her betrayal. As the week dragged on, they say karma has a way of coming back around. I started noticing subtle changes in Jessica's behavior. She was more on edge, checking her phone constantly and leaving the house more frequently. I wondered if she was aware of any impending trouble for Jake. It was time to tighten the screws a little further, and I needed her to feel the pressure. I decided to hit her where it would hurt the most, her independence. I started leaving our shared car at home and using public transportation. I made it clear that I was no longer willing to be her chauffeur. I wanted her to feel the weight of having no car and the impending doom of losing Jake's garage as I watched from the sidelines. The tension in the house grew thicker, and I could sense her frustration bubbling just below the surface. She would sometimes snap at me over trivial matters, and I relished every moment. I wanted her to feel the consequences of her actions, to realize exactly what she had lost. My heart raced at the thought of what was to come. I was ready for the fallout, whatever it might be, and I steeled myself for the emotional storm ahead. As the days turned into weeks, the tension in our apartment became almost unbearable. Jessica had started asking me if I could drop her off at work instead of her taking public transportation. I could see the frustration on her face as she struggled with the inconvenience of not having a car. I could have easily given in, but that wasn't going to happen. I wanted her to feel the weight of her choices, every little consequence of her actions. Every time she brought up her need for a vehicle, I would simply shrug and say, "You'll figure it out." I was enjoying the game we were playing, but I also noticed the cracks forming in her facade. There were moments when she would look at me with a mix of confusion and guilt, and I could sense that she was starting to realize the gravity of her betrayal. One evening, after a particularly long day at work, I returned home to find Jessica pacing the living room. The moment she saw me, she flared up, her frustration boiling over. "Mark, this isn't fair. I need my car back. I can't just rely on public transport all the time." I turned off the news I had been half watching and faced her. "You know what's not fair, Jess? Cheating on your husband." The words slipped out sharper than I intended, but they hung in the air, heavy with accusation. "Seriously, you're still on this?" She shot back, arms crossed defensively. "It was a mistake. I said I was sorry, but I wasn't interested in her apologies anymore." "Sorry doesn't fix things, Jessica. You made your choice." The anger boiling within me felt good, like a release I had been holding back. She stepped closer, her voice low and almost pleading. "I didn't mean for it to happen. Just sex, it didn't mean anything." Each time she said it, it twisted the knife deeper. I could feel my blood pressure rising, but I kept my composure. "If it didn't mean anything, then why are you so bent out of shape about not having a car? Why not call Jake for a ride? Isn't that what you want?" The look on her face was priceless, shock, anger, and a hint of guilt all mixing together. She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again, grappling with the truth that was now laid bare. "I can't believe you would go there," she finally said, her voice trembling. "How could you even think I'd call him? I'm not that person." I could see that my words were hitting home, and I felt a surge of satisfaction, but I didn't want to let her backtrack. "You wanted him, Jessica, and now you're left with nothing. No car, no Jake, and a husband who's done playing nice." The confrontation ended with her storming off to the bedroom, slamming the door behind her. I stood there, heart racing, feeling a mix of triumph and guilt. Was I truly being the monster in this situation? Maybe, but I felt justified in my actions. As the days wore on, I continued to watch Jessica struggle with the fallout of her choices. She was no longer the vibrant woman I had fallen in love with. She was a shadow of herself, stressed, anxious, and constantly checking her phone as if waiting for a message from Jake. I knew my report about his garage was making its way through the system, but I had no idea how long it would take for any real consequences to come crashing down. Every time I saw her glancing at her phone, I felt a spark of excitement. What if the news of her lover's misfortune came through while I was there to witness her reaction? One evening, I was sitting on the couch when I heard Jessica on the phone in the bedroom. Her tone was frantic. "No, no, I can't believe this is happening. You have to fix this, Jake." I strained to listen, my heart racing as I tried to catch every word. I could hear Jake's voice faintly through the receiver. "I don't know what to tell you, Jess. The shop is under investigation, and I can't do anything until it's resolved. I've got to lay low for a while." That was it. I felt a giddiness welling up inside me. The pieces were falling into place. I knew now that the investigation was underway, and it wouldn't be long before Jake's operation would crumble under the weight of the allegations. It was only a few days later when I got the news that Jake's garage had officially been shut down. I saw it on the local news while scanning through channels one evening. The report was brief but striking. Local mechanics' shop closed due to safety violations and unlicensed practices. Investigators are looking into multiple complaints from customers. My heart raced, and I could hardly contain my excitement. When Jessica came home that evening, I was waiting for her, a smug smile plastered across my face. "Hey, did you hear the news about Jake?" I asked casually, as if it were just another everyday topic. She looked at me, confusion written all over her face. "What are you talking about?" I leaned back, trying to appear nonchalant. "Oh, just that his shop got shut down. Apparently they found a ton of safety violations and complaints. Seems like he really wasn't the guy you thought he was." Her face paled, and for a split second I thought I saw a flicker of fear in her eyes. "What? No, no way, that can't be true. Oh, but it is. I leaned in closer, enjoying the moment. Looks like you're going to be without a car for a while, huh? The look on her face was priceless, a mixture of shock, anger, and realization. She had never truly thought about the implications of her actions, the reality of what she had lost, and I was ready to make her confront that truth. After a few moments of silence, she finally spoke, her voice trembling. "You did this, didn't you?" I smirked, feeling a vindictive sense of satisfaction. "What do you mean? I didn't lift a finger. You made this bed, now you have to lie in it." Jessica's world was crumbling, and it felt like everything I had been waiting for was finally coming to fruition. But deep down, I felt a pang of sadness for the woman I once loved. This was not just about revenge anymore. It was about the realization that our marriage had turned into a battleground. And now, I had to decide what I wanted to do next. Would I let her suffer in this chaos, or would I take the opportunity to confront the bigger issues in our relationship? The days that followed were tense and filled with bitterness. Jessica was now without a car, and her anger was palpable. She tried to mask it with bravado, but I could see that she was struggling. She would leave the apartment early in the morning, trying to catch a ride with coworkers, only to return late, exhausted and frazzled. It was a constant reminder of what she had lost, and it was hard for me to watch, given how much I once cared for her. The confrontation after Jake's garage had been shut down had left her visibly shaken. I could see that she was grappling with the reality of her choices, what it meant for her future, and how little control she had over her own life now. We hardly talked, and when we did, it was filled with tension and blame. She would throw accusations at me, claiming I was enjoying her downfall, and I would retort that she brought this on herself. But as the days turned into weeks, I could feel the emotional weight of all this starting to get to me. It was one thing to plot revenge, and another to feel the effects of the fallout constantly bearing down on us. I had set out to make her feel the impact of her decisions, yet I began to realize that my own happiness was getting lost in this vicious cycle of anger and resentment. One evening, after yet another long day, I returned home to find Jessica sitting at the dining table, her face buried in her hands. The sight hit me like a ton of bricks. I had been so focused on my vendetta that I hadn't truly considered the emotional toll this was taking on her or on me. "Jess," I said cautiously, trying to gauge her mood. "We need to talk." She looked up, her eyes red-rimmed and tired. "What's there to talk about? You've made your point clear." "I know I have," I replied, taking a seat across from her. "But this isn't just about revenge anymore. I can see how much you're struggling without your car, without Jake, and honestly, it's exhausting for me to see you like this. Is that supposed to make me feel better?" She shot back, her voice laced with sarcasm. "You wanted this, didn't you? You wanted to watch me suffer." I took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. "No, I wanted you to realize what you were risking. I wanted you to understand the consequences of your choices, but I didn't want to watch you drown in this misery. I thought it would bring me satisfaction, but it hasn't. If anything, it's left me feeling hollow." Jessica stared at me, her expression shifting from anger to confusion. "What do you want from me, Mark? Do you want me to grovel, to beg for forgiveness?" I shook my head. "No, that's not it. I just want to know if we can find a way forward, if there's any chance we can salvage what's left of our marriage." Her brows knitted together as she contemplated my words. "I don't know if it's that simple. You can't just shut off the emotions, the hurt. I made a mistake, and it's not something I can just erase." "I understand that, and I don't expect you to," I said, my heart racing. "But if we're going to make this work, we need to start being honest with each other. Real honesty. I want to know why you did it. What was it that you were looking for outside our marriage?" Jessica took a moment, her expression softening. "I don't know, Mark. I felt restless, trapped in my routine. And then Jake came along. He made me feel alive, like I was desired. I didn't think about the consequences. I just acted impulsively." "Desire," I repeated, trying to process what she was saying. "That's what it came down to, a fleeting moment of excitement." Her eyes filled with tears, and she nodded. "I wanted to feel something different, something more. But I didn't realize how much I would hurt you in the process. I never wanted to lose you." Hearing her admit that made my heart ache. I had spent so much time plotting my revenge, And in that moment, all I wanted was to hold her, to remind her that we were in this together even when times got tough. But how could I, knowing the betrayal was still fresh? I can't promise that I'll get over this quickly, I said, my voice steady but filled with the weight of uncertainty. Trust takes time to rebuild, and right now I don't know if I can trust you again. I get that, she replied, her voice cracking. But I want to try. I'm willing to do what it takes. I've been thinking about my actions about us. I know I messed up, but I want to make things right. As we sat there, surrounded by the remnants of our shattered relationship, I realized there was still a flicker of hope. It would be a long road ahead, but at least we were both willing to start the journey toward healing. In the following days, we began to have more honest conversations about our feelings, our fears, and our expectations. Jessica seemed genuinely remorseful, and I found myself softening, letting go of some of the anger that had driven my revenge. But as we worked to rebuild our relationship, I couldn't shake the feeling that Jake was still lurking in the background. Despite his garage being shut down, there was a lingering anxiety that haunted me. Would he try to reach out to Jessica? Would she be tempted again? I made a decision that I needed to confront those fears head-on. I wanted to ensure that Jessica felt supported in her commitment to our marriage and that she understood the gravity of her past mistakes. I decided it was time to have a final conversation with Jake, to ensure that he understood that Jessica was off limits and that he had no place in our lives anymore. It would be a risk, but I felt it was necessary. After deciding that I needed to confront Jake, I felt a mix of apprehension and resolve. I knew this wouldn't be easy, but I couldn't let him linger in our lives any longer. I had to make it clear that Jessica was committed to me now, and I wouldn't stand for him trying to worm his way back into her life. The next day, I found myself standing outside the shuttered garage that had once been the hub of Jake's operation. It was ironic, really. Just a few weeks ago, I had been plotting his downfall, and now I was standing here to confront him. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. I didn't know if he would be angry, defensive, or even remorseful, but I had to be prepared for anything. I walked around to the back of the building and found Jake sitting on a crate, looking visibly stressed and dejected. His mechanic's jumpsuit was stained, and he looked more disheveled than I had seen him before. It was clear that the closure of his garage had taken a toll on him. "Jake," I called out, and he looked up, surprised to see me there. "Mark," he replied, standing up and brushing himself off. "What are you doing here?" "I need to talk to you," I said, my voice steady but firm. "We need to set some boundaries." His expression shifted slightly, turning cautious. "About what, Jess?" "Yeah, about Jess," I confirmed. "I know things got messy between you two, but I want to make it clear that she's my wife and she's committed to rebuilding our marriage. You don't get to call her or try to reach out to her anymore," he scoffed, crossing his arms. "You really think she's going to stick with you after everything? The moment she gets the chance, she'll come running back to me." I felt a surge of anger at his words, but I kept my cool. "You don't know her like I do. Jess is making an effort to change, to be better, but you need to stay out of it. If you care about her at all, you'll respect our marriage and let this go." Jake's expression darkened, and for a moment it felt like we were two fighters circling each other, waiting for the other to make a move. "You don't know what you're asking for. She was looking for something that you clearly weren't giving her." "Maybe so," I replied, my voice rising slightly. "But that doesn't make what you did right. You encouraged her to cheat on me, and now you've lost your garage and the chance to be with her. You need to accept that." He looked away, a flicker of regret crossing his face. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen. It was just supposed to be fun, nothing serious." "I didn't think she would actually leave you." "Fun? You think cheating is fun?" I retorted, incredulity spilling over. "You might want to rethink your definition of fun, Jake. You've hurt both of us, and now it's time to step back for good." He hesitated, glancing at the ground as if weighing his options. "Fine. You want me to stay away? I will. I'm not interested in getting involved in your mess anymore anyway." With that, Jake turned to walk away, but I couldn't let him off that easily. "Just so we're clear, if you ever try to contact her again, I won't hesitate to make sure you regret it. I'll do everything in my power to keep you away from us." He nodded, his shoulders slumped. "Understood." As I walked away, I felt a strange sense of relief wash over me. I had stood up for my marriage and made it clear that Jake was no longer a threat. Whether it would be enough to keep him away from Jessica remained to be seen, but at least I had taken a stand. When I returned home, Jessica was sitting on the couch flipping through channels absent-mindedly. She looked up as I walked in, her expression shifting from worry to curiosity. "How did it go?" she asked, her voice apprehensive. "I talked to him," I replied, taking a seat beside her. "I made it clear that he needs to stay out of our lives." Her eyes widened and she let out a breath she had been holding. "You did? What did he say?" "He acted like a jerk at first, but I think he got the message in the end." I reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "You don't have to worry about him anymore. He's out of the picture." Tears filled Jessica's eyes, and for a moment I thought she would break down. Instead, a smile spread across her face. "Thank you for doing that. I can't believe you went out there to talk to him. You didn't have to." "I wanted to," I said softly. "I know it's been hard for both of us, but if we're going to rebuild this, we need to work together. I don't want you to feel like you're stuck in the past anymore." She nodded, her expression growing more serious. "I really am trying to change, Mark. I don't want to lose you. I want to make this work." I took a deep breath, feeling a mix of hope and uncertainty. We both have a lot of work to do. Trust won't come back overnight, but I think we can get there if we're honest with each other. The days that followed were a strange mix of uncomfortable conversations and moments of connection. We slowly began to break down the walls we had built up around our hearts and started to talk about our feelings more openly. I found myself sharing my fears and insecurities, while Jessica revealed her struggles with feeling trapped and uncertain. While the path ahead was still rocky, I could sense that we were moving in a better direction. The bitterness that had once filled our home was being replaced by a sense of collaboration and understanding. But even as we began to heal, there was still an underlying tension that I couldn't shake, the fear that our past mistakes would come back to haunt us. I knew we would need to confront those fears openly if we wanted any hope of moving forward together. Would we be able to overcome the shadows of betrayal and carve out a new future, or would our past ultimately destroy what we were trying to rebuild? As the weeks went by, Jessica and I continued to navigate the treacherous waters of our relationship. We had both made significant strides in being honest and transparent with each other, yet I could still feel the ghost of her affair hovering just above us. It was a constant reminder of our fractured trust and the pain we had both endured. One evening, as we sat on the couch watching a movie, I turned to her and asked, "Do you ever think about what we'll do if Jake tries to reach out again?" Jessica paused, her expression serious. "I hope it doesn't come to that. I want to believe that he's moved on too, but I know I need to be prepared for anything." Her words struck a chord in me. We had both acknowledged the reality of our situation, but I felt a deep-seated anxiety that wouldn't let me rest easy. "You need to promise me that if he ever tries to contact you, you'll let me know immediately. No lies, no secrets." "I promise," she said, looking me in the eye. "I'm committed to this, Mark. I want to make it work. I need you to trust me again." Trust. That word echoed in my mind, a weighty sentiment that felt both essential and elusive. I wanted to trust her, but it was going to take time. I realized I had to focus on my own healing as well, which meant letting go of the fear that had taken root in my heart. During this time, I encouraged Jessica to seek counseling, not just for our relationship but for herself as well. I believed that understanding her own motivations and feelings would help her become a better partner. To my surprise, she agreed and began attending sessions, opening up about her feelings of restlessness and the reasons behind her actions. It was a step in the right direction. I, too, sought support, talking to a therapist about my own feelings of betrayal and anger. I had spent so long plotting revenge that I hadn't taken the time to process my pain properly. It was cathartic to express my emotions, to dissect the layers of hurt and betrayal, and to realize that I needed to forgive, not just Jessica but also myself for not seeing the signs earlier. One afternoon, after a particularly insightful therapy session, Jessica and I sat down at our kitchen table, ready to talk about what we had learned. "I think I'm starting to understand why I cheated," she said, her voice steady yet emotional. It wasn't just about wanting something different. It was about feeling like I didn't have control over my life. I made choices that hurt you, and I'm so sorry. Her honesty hit me hard. I could see the sincerity in her eyes, and it brought a wave of emotions flooding back. I appreciate you saying that, Jess. I really do. But I need you to understand that it's going to take a long time for me to fully trust you again. I'm not there yet. I get that, she replied, nodding. And I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn that trust back. I want us to be better, to be stronger. I know that it starts with me being accountable for my actions. As we continued to talk, we began discussing our future goals, what we wanted from each other and our marriage. It was refreshing to finally have open communication without the weight of deceit hanging over our heads. Months passed, and while I still had moments of doubt, I could see Jessica working hard to rebuild our relationship. She was more present, more engaged, and it made a difference. Instead of dwelling on the past, we started creating new memories together: date nights, spontaneous road trips, and even cooking meals together. I noticed that the tension between us had begun to ease. The laughter that once filled our home had gradually returned, and I found myself smiling more often, genuinely enjoying her company. But then one day, while I was tidying up the living room, I came across an unopened letter addressed to Jessica from the Automotive Regulatory Agency. My heart sank as I recognized the return address. It was an investigation report about Jake's garage. I hesitated for a moment, torn between my instincts to protect Jessica and my need for transparency. I decided to confront her, even though I worried it might stir up old wounds. "Jess, can we talk?" I called out, trying to keep my tone casual. She walked in, her expression shifting when she saw the letter in my hand. "What's that?" "It's a letter about Jake's garage," I said, trying to gauge her reaction. Her eyes widened, and I could see a flicker of fear. "What does it say?" "It's not opened," I replied, handing it to her. "I thought we should read it together." She took the letter, her hands shaking slightly as she opened it. As she read, I watched her expression change: shock, anger, then sadness. "Facing serious charges," she said quietly. "This is bad. Do you feel guilty?" I asked, my voice steady but filled with concern. She looked at me, tears spilling over. "I do. He was a mistake. I never wanted to hurt you, and now I see how his actions have consequences. Just remember that this is the past," I said gently. "We're building something new together. You don't have to carry that guilt with you anymore. We're moving forward." Jessica nodded, wiping her tears away. "You're right. I want to focus on us and the future we're creating together." "I do want to live in fear or regret. We can't let his mistakes define our relationship." In that moment, I felt a surge of hope. We had faced the shadows of our past together, and we were willing to confront whatever lay ahead. As I held her close, I realized that while the road to rebuilding our marriage was still a work in progress, we were finally moving in the right direction. We had learned the hard way that love was not just about passion. It was about trust, communication, and understanding. We both had scars from the past, but those scars didn't have to dictate our future. Together, we could overcome anything. I was ready to embrace the journey ahead, knowing that love, in its truest form, was worth fighting for.